As Janice told, we are having an exhibition at Frank Museum, and I would like to show now a bit more about my artworks and about how was my career and the path that I follow to arrive here. So, I will start showing some artworks. These, for example, that's 1995. It was my first, I consider this my first work. It's an installation. I mean, it's made on cloth. And you see it was mounted like this, for example, it was almost 1,500 pieces. So I will show you how is it. Like this. I will explain it. Yes. We have here 11 photos from my family. Since I started my career as an artist, I was really interested to know about my place in Brazilian society, about the place that I occupy in that society, and about the place that my group, my racial group, occupy in Brazil. So I started investigating, researching some about this, looking for some old photos, my family photos. I just found a box with a lot of photos and started to think about who is these people. I know, of course, my parents, but why they are looking for in the life, why they expect, how they deal with society. So I started to think about my group, but using first my family. In this case, for example, we have 11 photos from my family that I put in this shape, this small shape that is very special for Afro-Brazilian people. It's a shape that is intended to give us protection. So I put 11 images from my family on this that we call patois. And I put them on the wall like an immense, a very large memory game. Brazilian people are not recognized as part of the country, our culture is not recognized. So you can ignore maybe black people in a crowd, but you can't ignore 1,500 eyes directed on you. So I made this large, enormous panel that is called the Wall of Memories, like to be my memory, the memory of my group, the memory of my family, and thinking about the country, starting to look at my family. So I consider this my first artwork. I was a student in this case, so I was very young when I made this madness because when I started it was so fun to make one, but 2, 3, 1,000. It was very difficult, but I really like this artwork. After I made this inside media, working on embroidery frames, I was thinking about violence. I have my young sister, sorry. She is a social worker. So she started very young as a social worker. So went to deal places where women that suffered gender violence looks for help. And she started to tell me about the kind of violence that she found in these places. And I was really shocked when she told me about things that we have at home, for example, and nobody paid attention, but were used like instruments, like power instruments, you know, in a relationship, in a couple, you know, people living in the same house. So I made these artworks, like to show, trying to show about the life and about how these women face the kind of violence that they face, and the impossibility to call for help, to call for attention. So even the mouths, for example, seeing on the mouths, on the eyes, the impossibility to see themselves in the world, for example, the impossibility to look for help, this kind of stuff. And as I used only images from my family, I was, you remember I found a box with images, I was completely fascinated with that photo, so I used these photos. Also, of course, all the images are from black women. So when I realized that we had another level of violence in these images because it was related with racial violence. In Brazil, black women occupied the worst jobs, the bad paid jobs. So we have them here, so it's like to have another level of violence in these artworks. So I made some of this. 1997, and it was discussing gender violence and racial violence as well. One thing that I do as an artist, I like to try to experiment different medias. I love try the same work in different medias, for example. In this case, I use drawing a lot. I like to draw, I like to make installations, printmaking. I received the training in printmaking. So I really like to deal with different medias. And these are examples of my drawings. And I like to think about the females and about the history. Historically, females have been linked with insects in different cultures. We have, for example, the spider myth. That's arachne in Greek language. The idea of the female as a spider that have this ability to take from her body, her nest, her house, her life. We have some Brazilians and native people that believe that the spiders made the world, the net of the world. So I like this link with this myths between females and some insects. And these drawings are relating to this. These are from the River series, and I'm thinking about the myths that are linked with the females in some different cultures. This Mars sample is 2011, and I am thinking again like the females like the spiders, but I'm thinking about violence, and I'm thinking about thinking about solitude as well. So it's like she's making a cocoon to protect herself. So all the time I'm thinking about some myths about the situation, about the place occupied by females in society. This is another example. Just to show some drawings, so you can know better my work. And this sculpture, very small sculpture. As I told you, I like to test different medias. So I made first the drawings, and I tried to see how does it works if in a sculpture, for example. Dealing with the same idea of solitude, to make a cocoon to protect yourself, because violence is really a problem not only in Brazil, but I think all around the world, gender violence. But sometimes for women, let's say, to protect herself, it's like to protect their life. It's a risk. Okay, but for women, sometimes to protect themselves is like to protect their lives. Gender violence is something very present, unfortunately, in Brazilian society. Not there, but I think that a lot of different countries. So I'm thinking about this. Sometimes females have to defend themselves and isolated from the world at the same time. It's like something, they think they are protecting themselves, but they are isolating as well. It's a very cruel process. Just a detail. Another detail. Another sculpture about the females, the role played by females in some societies. This burden that females have to carry on in places like Brazil, for example. And now I will show you some works that I started in 2012. It's a very very normal leap, because I have a lot of works, 25 years work, so I just make this to try to show you my actual research, the things that you must see at Frank Museum, because I'm working now with this project that I started in 2012. Until now I carry on working with this project that is related to science, artificial science, and how science was used to justify racism, and how it marked, for example, Brazilian society. So in 2012, I found this image in a book in Brazil, and it was a book about black people in Brazil. Its photo was made in 1865 by Augusto Stahl, that was a photographer that lived in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He was commissioned by Louis Agassiz, that was a researcher from a scientist and researcher from Harvard University that went to Brazil. And officially he went to Brazil to research about the Amazonian fishes. But he went to there not only by the fishes. Louis Agassiz, he was a scientist, that was a creationist, and that believed that some people, the white people, was in a position superior than black people. And I saw this photo. I thought, why this guy went to Brazil if American had black people as well? So discovered that the other part of the theory, the Agassiz theory, that was mixing different peoples could make, how can I say, the destruction of both different types. I mean, you could have an interracial marriage, for example, black and white. It could to direct them, you know, to bad things, to ruin the race. So we went to Brazil because Brazil was mixed culture, as the country is still today. So I found this, and I started to work with this female. This is the front, another image. So I was thinking about the idea of Agassiz, and I changed that idea. For me, images has a power. It's a power that don't end when we saw the photo or the image, but it carry on, like it making normals unconscious about, you know, prejudice about people, about things. So to change that negative ideas, that bad ideas about the black population, just making another images showing good ideas, as I can say, I don't know if it's a correct way to say it, but I used that idea to make this drawing, for example, that show her not as a degenerated person, but like a seed for a culture, a seed for a country, as a person that is part of settlement that for a new country. And another drawing from the same series. And after, I went to New Mexico University and made these prints. We have these prints at Frank Museum. So just go there and you can see. And after, I made a larger work at the same series, settlement, because when I finished the lithographies, everybody told me, okay, they're so beautiful. You will stop with this research. And I myself look at the photo, and I saw that the photo has a great power, so I would like to enlarge this. The work was asking me to make it larger. So I caused by slavery. So when you look at her, you see that it don't fix well. The parts of the body, they are not correct that fixed, because you can't fix the trauma. So I was looking for a way to humanize these people, to humanize this idea of slavery. They were people, they are not only numbers. So the way that I thought was like to cut her in parts, put parts together, but don't fix. To show, and I gave her an heart as well. And after I started to work with postal cards about the black population in Brazil. Brazil is known as a tropical paradise, very beautiful country. That was a tropical paradise for whom? And so we had this kind of postcards about the country. They are postcards from the 8th century. And I was thinking about the plants, the flora and fauna that we have in the country. So I used some old books, like this one, and made a series like this. This is called the Adam and Eve in the Brazilian Paradise. The title that I'm questioning the country. I see Brazil sometimes like in a normal warehouse where plants and people and animals, I mean flora, fauna and people are there just to be exploited. Part of population are there just to be exploited. So I made this like an Adam and Eve and put this in this tropical paradise. This one same series. And here. And here the tail. La collage. And after I finished that work, I saw that I was very interesting. My interest in science and how science is able to justify the racial prejudice. I just think that I had to study it more, so I made a book that was called Natural History, discussing this concept of natural history, and this is the book. It's called in Portuguese História Natural. It's an artist book, so we can open these and we can we can have these pages on cloth or paper at all time. And I like this first page because for me it just resumes the idea of colonization. We can read there o progresso das nações, a salvação das almas, o amor pela ciência. It means the progress of the nations, the salvation of the souls, and the love for the science. All the concepts that were used to justify slavery and to justify colonization. So for me it's like a resume, and I see countries like South America, for example, as an enormous laboratory about racism, about colonization, and all the things that they tested there, they applied it in Africa in the last century, for example. So these are the pages of the book, Natural History. And so in this case, a flora, about the plants, a fauna, about the animals, and as gentes in Portuguese, that is the people. And here I start to really discuss about the science, like for example, a ciência à luz da verdade. Of course, it is right in Portuguese, but it's like, for example, is the science the truth, the light of the truth? Discussing the role played by science in the 80s, that justifying the slavery and the control of one people on other people. Science was used a lot. Science was never neutral. People say, okay, science is neutral. Science was never neutral. It was usually to justify killing, this kind of stuff. So this book is about this. And about technology, for example, we have here a map, an African map. The same technology that allowed the people to know better the world and to mapping the world gave us this. For example, that is the plant of the brooks, the slavery ship. So we can see how really worked the process of slavery, because all the space was full with bodies. So we can see, for example, there about technology. It was the same technology that allowed to mapping, but that was the result of the bad use of technology. This is other same book. And these, for example, all these are the natural history. In this case, I work with the native people that lived in Brazil before Portuguese people arrived there. So the names of these groups, like Ticuna, Guarani, Aimoré, Goitacás, all these are names of native groups that lived in Brazil before Portuguese people arrived there. This is, I carry on this idea about slavery. This time I make some works on cloth. It's to use the same idea of the book, but it was so small for me. The size of the shape of the book, the size of the book, the notes. This idea is powerful. I have to enlarge it. So I started to print. I made a research to print directly on cloth in my studio. I would like to know better machine, so I started to print it directly on an ordinary printer in my studio to print direct on cloth. And I started to make like this group of words. It's a detail. This is my exhibition before here in Lisbon, Portugal. Just Atlântico Vermelho, that's red Atlantic. Just show you some images of my work. That was the exhibition. This work actually is here. This work you can see is a Prime Museum. Some images. This is the book. How normally I show the book. I like to show the book in vitrines, like in natural history museums. I think the best way to show the book is to put the plates on vitrines. This is a curiosity cabinet. This is Tropical Paradise. This is the series that gave the name for the exhibition at the museum. You can see some of them are being showing at the museum. This is the idea of thinking Brazil, as I told you, as a tropical paradise, but for whom? And some more research using clothes. This work actually is at the museum as well, at the French Museum. Sometimes you can see that sometimes I use the same name for clothes, for printings, for collages. As an artist, I am interested to check, to see how can I use the same subject, sometimes the same name, to stretch it and see how a name supports an idea, for example. So it's very common for me to use like the same name in a cloth like this one, or in a collage, or in a series. I like this kind of technical experiment, to experiment techniques. So I use sometimes the same name, the same idea, trying to get as much as I can from that idea. That's right, Atlantic. that we're almost finishing. Okay, that was the last one. So some of these works are different museums, so I invite you to go there and see it. And at the end, I will be glad to answer if you have some question. I will be glad to answer it. So that's it. Okay, thank you for coming.
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for being here.
Enfim, uma oportunidade única para um artista com a minha idade, no momento da carreira que eu estou.
It's a really unique opportunity for me, for an artist of my age and the moment that I am in my life.
Compartilhar um espaço junto com Rosana, que é uma artista das mais consagradas do nosso país, é realmente uma honra.
It's a real honor to be sharing a space with Rosana, who is one of the most lauded artists in our country. So it's truly an honor.
Eu trouxe aqui alguns trabalhos que fazem referência a essa exposição, na verdade.
I brought you some of my work that are part of this exhibition.
Eu vou me ater aos trabalhos que estão aqui, mas se vocês quiserem, enfim, fazer alguma interferência, que eu fale sobre alguns trabalhos, fiquem à vontade para me interromper.
I'm going to focus on the work that I brought here, but please feel free to interrupt me, ask me about anything else that you may want to know.
Bom, o recorte que veio para cá, como a Janice disse, é de uma exposição maior que eu fiz recentemente no Rio de Janeiro.
So the pieces that came here, as Janice mentioned, are part of a larger exhibition that I recently had in Rio de Janeiro.
Cujo nome em português é Terra em Chamas.
The name in Portuguese is Land in Flames.
Que faz uma referência à construção dos trabalhos, mas também ao nome do meu país, Brasil.
It makes reference to my work, but it also is the name of my country, Brazil.
Brasil é um nome de origem indígena que se refere a um tipo de vegetal, uma madeira que existe no nosso país, de cor avermelhada, muito próxima à cor do sangue e à cor de chamas do fogo.
Brazil is an indigenous word that it is a vegetable. It is something in the natural world. It's a wood, and it is red in color, which has to do with blood and has to do with flames.
Nas conversas com o curador da exposição do Rio, me pareceu adequado adotar esse nome, seja por conta dos temas e da construção dos meus trabalhos, também fazendo uma referência à história do Brasil e especialmente à história do Brasil atual.
So, talking to the curators of the exhibition in Brazil, this name seemed appropriate due to the history of Brazil, how Brazil was formed, and in particular to the current moment of what's going on in Brazil at present.
E de modo ampliado, creio que também é um nome adequado ao se tratar de questões referentes à história das Américas como um todo.
And I think, on a broader theme is that this is an appropriate name to refer to the history of the Americas as a whole.
Assim como o vermelho que existe no nome do Brasil, a gente sabe que a história das Américas é banhada por essa cor em todo do seu início até hoje.
In addition to the name of Brazil and the redness for the color of Brazil wood, we know that this makes reference to the history of the Americas and what it has gone through.
E para abordar esse tipo de questão, eu parto de uma observação de alguns pilares da construção do meu saber, mas também que eu acredito da construção dos saberes das Américas.
So I'm basing myself on things that that come from my creation of knowledge, but also from what the Americas have brought to the world as knowledge.
De lado, a questão de saber científico estruturado pela academia, e de outro, saber popular que vem da vivência diária e especialmente nos países do sul, esse contato com a natureza.
So, on the one hand, the scientific world coming from the academy, but on the other hand, popular knowledge that especially in the countries of the South, that have to do with the natural world.
Eu vou começar a passar os trabalhos e acredito que essas questões vão ficando mais evidentes.
I'm going to show you the pieces, and I think as I show them to you, you are going to see for yourselves. It's going to be very evident how this is displayed.
Eu vou começar exatamente pelo trabalho que a Janice disse que gerou maior incômodo, maior curiosidade, que é esse com os pássaros taxidermizados.
I'm going to start by speaking about the work that Janice talked about that has created, maybe more an intrigue or more curiosity, which are the birds represented as, the birds that are here.
Okay. Para esse trabalho eu reuni junto a alguns criadores de pássaros ornamentais animais que haviam morrido dentro de cativeiro.
So for this work, I gathered with breeders, people who are raising birds, animals that had died. For me, it is quite an affront, or it's very hurtful to think about beings being raised and meeting the end that they had, like this one's in the installation.
Dado interessante é que, enfim, no Brasil existem muitos criadores de pássaros ornamentais e desses pássaros que são criados em cativeiro, pelo menos 25% morrem antes de serem vendidos, eles morrem dentro do próprio criador.
Yeah, in Brazil there are quite a lot of ornamental bird breeders, and one interesting fact that I discovered was that about 25% of these birds that are caged and being ready to be sold, they die before they are able to be sold.
Me parece um tanto contraditório quando um símbolo como um pássaro, que é um símbolo de liberdade, jamais pode ter sua vida solta, jamais pode ter sua vida ao ar livre e, enfim, e criado como um objeto simplesmente para ornamentar a casa de pessoas ricas.
It is just unbelievable to see that, inconceivable to see that an animal whose purpose is to be free, and it has been bred to just never fulfill its mission and to be in cages just to decorate rich people's houses.
Desse modo, eu recolhi então os corpos dos pássaros já quando estavam mortos e junto a um taxidermista pedi que ele taxidermizasse esses pássaros em posição de voo.
So I gathered these birds after they had died, and together with the taxidermist, I asked him to pose them as if they were in flight.
Esses pássaros que nunca puderam voar em vida, pelo menos uma vez conseguiram se colocar numa posição de voo, ainda que seja após a morte.
These animals that never had a chance to be flying freely during their lives are now finally able to fly after their death.
Também lancei mão desses pássaros porque é uma imagem muito difundida do Brasil através dessas aves exóticas, de um modo mais amplo na América do Sul. As aves exóticas com essas cores exuberantes são muito associadas ao nosso país.
I also decided to use this as birds, and exotic birds, colorful birds are a symbol of Brazil and of Latin America in general, and that was the reason for also using them.
Por sua vez, a taxidermia, do jeito que é feita, também faz uma referência ao ambiente acadêmico, já que dentro de um museu de ciências naturais a gente tem dois modos de se taxidermizar pássaro. De um lado, a taxidermia científica e do outro, o que chamam de taxidermia artística.
So, I also was looking at the juxtaposition of having, in the scientific world, how taxidermy is done in two types of varieties. One is a scientific taxidermy and the other one is artistic taxidermy.
Bom, e com esses pássaros taxidermizados, então eu os prendi com fio cabos de aço e na base há um prumo de centro, que é um pêndulo usado comumente no Brasil na construção civil.
So the way that I created this, after the birds went through taxidermy, I used steel cables to hold them. And there's a pendulum at the bottom. It's a builder's
Plumb. Like a plumb line?
A plumb line, yes, used in construction. Thank you.
E desse modo montei essa instalação onde eu contraponho também o peso deste material ferroso junto do pássaro taxidermizado.
I also have it's the weight of the metal that is used for the installation, in juxtaposition with the weight of the bird. I'm going back to the beginning now.
Outro trabalho que eu trouxe para cá é esse, onde eu construí uma instalação que remete à disposição com que plantas são dispostas nas casas das pessoas comumente no Brasil.
I brought this piece here as well. It is the idea that how plants are displayed commonly in Brazilian homes.
Não é raro na periferia da nossa cidade a gente encontrar casas muito simples com paredes repletas de plantas, com esses suportes de ferros, em uma distribuição um tanto quanto aleatória.
It's not uncommon for us to see in the outskirts of the city, in poorer areas, to see plants on the walls or on the walls of the houses displayed with this metal supports there in kind of a random distribution.
Eu quis aproveitar então essa diagramação das casas como as casas em que eu cresci no Brasil, e para essa disposição eu trouxe uma caixa de madeira que eu revesti com azulejos.
So I wanted to show how this was done, even in houses like the one I grew up in. And what I did was I covered a box with tiles.
Esses azulejos são azulejos muito comuns nas casas de classe média e baixa no Brasil, especialmente entre a década de 70 e 80.
So these are tiles that are very commonly found in medium to low income houses in Brazil, especially found in the 70s and 80s.
Busquei meu arquivo familiar e eu classifiquei, eu listei tipos de azulejo que eu via na casa dos meus avós, na casa dos meus tios. Fui atrás desses azulejos em cemitérios de azulejo, lojas que vendem azulejos antigos, e daí eu construí essas caixas com essa referência.
I went back into my family records, the albums that my family had, on what kind of tiles I could see in my uncle and aunt's house, in my grandparents' house. And I was able to find some of those in old tile houses, stores. And then I was able to create my boxes, my planters using that.
Sobre os azulejos, então, eu fiz uma série de desenhos de cobras típicas brasileiras.
On the tiles, I drew several Brazilian snakes over the tiles.
Essas cobras, enfim, abraçando, o desenho tridimensionalizado pela caixa, mas essas cobras eu escolhi especialmente porque elas fazem uma alusão a alguns aspectos da cultura brasileira que me interessam.
The snake goes around, more than one side of the boxes, and what they represent to me several aspects, and it's an allusion to certain aspects of Brazilian culture.
Bom, eu usei como base imagens da ilustração científica, mas especialmente dessas cobras brasileiras, porque elas fazem referência a certo saber popular que me interessa.
My interest was to look at the Brazilian snakes and how they're scientific, but also I'm interested in some of their meanings in the popular world.
Diferentemente das religiões de origem cristã católica, Há no Brasil uma religião que bebe nas fontes do catolicismo, mas também das religiões de origem afro, que coloca simbolicamente as cobras em outro lugar, não no lugar de pecado, mas no lugar da proteção.
So, differently from Christian, Catholic Christian background, there are Brazilian beliefs or Brazilian religions that borrow from Christianity, but also borrow from African religions, and they don't put snakes in the place of sin, but rather of protection.
Essas cobras, elas são normalmente ligadas a alguns orixás de religiões afro e me tocam especialmente por conta de uma religião que existe no Brasil chamada Umbanda, que é uma mistura de religiões de origem cristã e religiões de origem afro.
So some of the snakes, they represent the orishas, which are the deities in in these African religions, and they especially the one that speaks to me is a religion called Umbanda that combines aspects of Christianity to African religions.
Dentro da minha história pessoal também, essas imagens elas fazem uma referência à minha história pessoal, haja vista que era muito comum eu me lembrar, na década de 80, meus avós frequentando grupos de Umbanda escondidos porque se diziam católicos.
This also refers to my life history because it takes me back to a time where my grandparents would go attend some meetings for the Umbanda. Well, people would go and have the rituals of Umbanda at the same time that they told the world that they were Catholic.
Daí, em vista disso tudo, resolvi trazer a imagem da cobra para o meu trabalho. Também essa referência à religião de Umbanda, que me parece que é um dos pontos que simplificam o que é a formação dos povos latinos como um todo.
I wanted to bring the snakes to the work, to my work, but also it also to me means that this mixture of religions refers to the formation of the peoples of South America.
A Umbanda ela é uma religião que nasce no Rio de Janeiro no começo do século XX, na virada do 19 para o 20, na verdade, mas que se aproveita de rituais de religiões afrodescendentes como o candomblé, que se aproveita de um momento, ela nasce dentro de um centro kardecista de origem positivista francesa e que sincretiza os orixás com os santos católicos.
So this is a religion that came into being at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century in Rio de Janeiro, and it brings together rituals and deities from African religions, such as candomblé. It adds other aspects of a positivist philosophy from Kardec, and that's what has come together as this religion.
E o nascimento dessa religião é muito interessante. Ela nasce dentro de um centro kardecista por um médium que se recusa, que na verdade passa a incorporar espíritos típicos brasileiros, como caboclos, pretos velhos, negros escravizados, e dentro desse centro ele sofre retaliação dos dirigentes, que dizem que ele não deve receber esses espíritos atrasados. E ele funda essa nova religião.
So the history of this religion is that it is a medium that is incorporating spirits that come, and rather than being the usual the Kardec, the positivist spirits, the ones that are coming down onto him are ones that are typical Brazilian figures, like the caboclo, which is an old working man who's a black man, also Preto Velho, sorry, that is also like a storyteller in African communities, And so the other members of this center complained, and they said, you know, you shouldn't be receiving as a host this lower spirits, and therefore the man breaks away from the group and starts his own religion.
A mim parece que isso diz muito sobre o que somos nós como povos americanos, né?
This to me speaks a lot to who we are as American people.
Uma religiosidade, uma espiritualidade que existe na prática, mas que muitas vezes é negada por conta de um preconceito.
Spirituality or religions that exist actually in practice, but they are denied due to prejudice.
Uma formação que se quer intelectual de origem positivista francesa, como no caso do kardecismo, e que procura negar os saberes populares.
A type of culture that will highlight positivist ideas like kardecism, and oftentimes not taking into account popular culture, popular knowledge.
Bom, de um jeito ou de outro, dessas informações participaram da construção desse trabalho.
In one way or another, all of this has influenced, has been part of the way that I created this work.
Bom, alguns outros trabalhos que estão aqui trazem imagens de animais em uma construção corpórea impossível.
Some of my other work that I want to show you here bring animals that are in some impossible poses for them in real life.
Como esse que abre a exposição, que está no flyer de divulgação, onde eu criei essa imagem de dois pássaros que estão unidos pela cabeça, não simplesmente encostados um no outro, mas colados, como se compartilhassem de um mesmo corpo.
So this is one that opens the series, and it is two birds that are next to each other, but not just next to each other, they are actually glued to each other, they are as if they are part of one another.
Essa pintura eu realizei sobre um tecido estampado que eu comprei em casas de tecido populares no Brasil.
This was something that I painted over a regular fabric that I bought in just a regular fabric store in Brazil.
Eu tenho comprado muitos tecidos como esse e, enfim, realizado uma série de trabalhos sobre esses tecidos. E a mim esses tecidos remetem também a um dado, digamos, científico da nossa história.
I have been purchasing pieces of fabric similar to this, but and to me what that represents is also scientific knowledge or what people consider science through the fabric, through the prints.
Esses tecidos eles remetem a uma construção de uma exuberância tropical, e criam uma imagem do que seria essa tropicalidade.
This refers to what it is tropical, a tropical construct, and takes us back to what tropical areas should be.
Bom, por sua vez, as imagens que muitas vezes tecidos trazem, elas não têm nenhum compromisso científico e com a realidade.
At the same time, these prints, they don't really have any commitment to anything that is scientific or anything that actually is real.
Então, nesses tecidos, muitas plantas, elas são criadas simplesmente, enfim, sem um compromisso com a realidade, e muitas vezes o que se vê é completamente diferente do que existiria no mundo real.
They are created basically with no commitment really to reality, and then oftentimes there is nothing to match this in real life.
Isso me leva isso me parece muito semelhante ao que aconteceu nos primórdios da colonização das Américas, quando viajantes que vinham aqui relatavam questões da nossa flora e fauna para desenhistas e pintores europeus que retratavam procuravam criar essas imagens em cima de relatos. E o resultado, a gente sabe que muitas vezes não tinha nada a ver com real.
So this takes me back to the relationship that existed in the history of the Americas, where explorers would go there and find flora and fauna of the places and go back to Europe. And people who were drawing were basing their drawings on the reports, on the oral reports, and they would create this fabulous work, in which oftentimes, as we know, never existed or never really reflect the reality in the Americas.
De algum modo, esse tipo de iconografia criada há séculos atrás foi o que construiu as bases do que a gente entende hoje como algo tropical, como algo latino-americano, como algo das Américas.
In an interesting way, as an icon, these things that were created hundreds of years ago is actually what formed the basis of the foundation of what we see as tropical, what we see as Latin America.
De algum modo isso acontece ainda hoje, como nesses tecidos, por exemplo.
To some extent, this still happens nowadays as we see it in this kind of fabric.
A ilustração científica também.
I brought some paintings to this exhibit, and here's one of them that I created using as a basis pictures from scientific drawings.
Essas imagens, originalmente, lógico, eu as modifiquei quando trouxe para minha pintura, especialmente alongando as raízes dessas plantas.
I of course changed them as I brought them into my painting, and especially lengthening or broadening the way that the roots are.
Originalmente essas plantas elas teriam raízes muito pequenas, e no meu trabalho eu as alongo muito.
Originally, these drawings would have very short roots, but in my work I like to lengthen them.
No mundo real isso teria algumas consequências, né? De um lado, a planta seria mais enraizada e ligada à sua terra. Por sua vez, plantas como essa, uma bromélia, elas receberiam muito mais água e entrariam num processo de suicídio. Elas se matariam exatamente por conta dessa raiz extremamente alongada.
If this was real, in the plant itself, there would be some consequences. One would be that it would be more rooted. So if it weren't lengthened like that. On the other hand, it would really, in the case of this plant, which is a bromelia, it would have a lot more water. It would take a lot more water from the ground, and it would start a process of a suicide of the plant. It would start rotting because too much water would be absorbed in the plant.
Me parece que é a mesma relação com a criação e o reforço dessa ideia de exuberância ligada aos países americanos.
To me, there's a very strong link to the construct of exuberance that is dedicated to American countries.
E, por fim, outro trabalho que eu trouxe para cá.
Finally, another piece that I brought with me.
São caixas de madeira.
Are wooden boxes.
Onde eu desconstruo a bidimensionalidade do desenho, transformando o desenho numa escultura.
Where I deconstruct the two-dimensional drawing and I create them as a sculpture.
Trabalho também como base e tenho como base imagens de pássaros típicos brasileiros.
I'm using typical Brazilian birds.
Mas como a gente pode ver, eu desconstruo toda a anatomia desse pássaro, alongando, assim como eu fiz na pintura sobre tecido estampado.
Similarly to the way that I was working on the printed fabric that I showed you, I also I lengthen some parts, I deconstruct the birds in such a way that they can be longer in some parts.
E nesses trabalhos também eu aproveito madeiras que são utilizadas para construir caixas de transporte de obras de arte.
So in this work I also use the medium, the boxes. I'm reusing material that is left over from art installations, refusals. So things that are no longer used in art installations.
me interessa também esses lugares que o mundo da arte trabalha, e de algum modo eu trago o que seria um invólucro como parte da obra final.
My interest is to show that, to bring into the spaces where things are displayed, items that would no longer be used since they're just boxes, and then they are back as the main piece, as part of, back into the exhibition hall.
Assim como nesses trabalhos, que seguem o mesmo pensamento, em que eu trabalhei com essa madeira cor-de-rosa, que é muito comum no Brasil, muito comumente utilizada na construção civil.
So similarly to what I just said, I used in these pieces some pink wood, which is commonly used in construction projects in Brazil, just in building.
Essa madeira, ela deve ser colocada em lugares onde eu tenho um risco iminente, assim as pessoas ficam de pré-aviso de que algo pode acontecer se passar por ali.
It is commonly used in a place where to serve as a warning. So when people are going by these places, then it calls their attention.
Por sua vez, essa madeira é muito barata e ela sofre com o tempo. Então, já é esperado que esse rosado da madeira, com o passar do tempo, ele vai praticamente sumir. E dele eu vou, por sua vez, a pintura que existe em cima do rosa vai permanecer.
So another interesting aspect is that this is a very inexpensive material that changes over time, loses its pink. And I know that what I painted over it will show better as time goes by.
A mim me parece fascinante trabalho de desenho e pintura e que só vai estar efetivamente pronto daqui a 30 anos.
To me, it's really incredible to think about drawing a painting that I did that will actually only be ready about 35 years from now.
Bom, acho que eu já estourei meu tempo.
I think my time's up.
Se vocês tiverem alguma pergunta, fiquem à vontade.
Please ask me if you have any questions.
Obrigado.
Thanks,
Rosana, would you like to